If you've accumulated debt on personal expenses, then you have consumer debt. Consumer bankruptcy refers to the type of personal bankruptcy filed to reduce this type of debt. Today's guest handles consumer bankruptcy matters and is here to offer some information to help those in need. Andrew Ballantyne is with DSK Law and is also a FAMU Law alum.
Thank you.
So good to have you here. Good morning.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell us the difference between the kinds of consumer debt.
Sure. So there can be multiple types of consumer debt. You can have credit card debt. Oftentimes people have debts to medical providers, hospitals, doctors, you name it. There also can be, things like mortgages. There's all sorts of types of consumer debt, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, and a quick, tutorial on the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13
Sure.
bankruptcy.
Chapter 7 is what most people think of when they think of bankruptcy. It's the typical, we're going to trade in all of our liabilities, all of our debts for, any assets that we can't exempt. Chapter 13 is a little bit different in the sense that it's more of a reorganization where you're paying off those debts or a certain amount of them over typically a 5-year period.
And so at what point should a lawyer get involved?
Well, it is possible to file a bankruptcy as a pro se or on an individual basis. Getting a lawyer involved is more a question of how complicated is your situation. If you're Chapter 13, it's far more difficult to get have a successful case. So a 13 is definitely something where I think a lawyer should be involved, but it is possible to do a Chapter 7. But there are plenty of traps for the unwary and unprepared.
Right. Well, I'm sure it's pretty devastating. You're dealing with a lot of clients who are facing some tough times. And so how do you approach, how do you determine whether you're going to do the 7 or the 13 when you're advising a client?
Well, it really depends on their circumstances. In bankruptcy, in 2005, they revised the statutes and included what's called the means test. So only certain people can do a 7, and not a 13. And so there is a hard stop on that. But generally you work with the clients, work with their income and expenses, for that means test and try and see if you can get them into a 7 if that fits. Typically, if they're trying to save their house or something like that, then they have to go to a 13.
And how long are people generally affected by the filing?
Sure. So in the Chapter 7 cases usually run, 3 to 6 months, depending on what's happening. The effect on their credit will be much longer, up to 10 years because it's really a clean sweep. Chapter 13s can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending on the circumstances. The effects on their credit do last longer, but will be less because you're really reorganizing versus just clean sweeping off the debt.
Well, that's really interesting. Is there anything you'd like to add about your services or the bankruptcy laws in general right now? Are there any recent changes?
Absolutely, yeah. It's, like I said, it's very complicated. There are lots of issues and sub-issues that arise. Even just consulting with an attorney, if you intend to do it yourself, is worth the time. I will generally talk to folks on the phone and just talk to them about their circumstances and see whether or not it makes any sense. Sometimes bankruptcy isn't simply the option, but no, that's pretty much it.
Why wouldn't it be?
Well, you may be able to. It may be a situation where you have a small debt and it's simply not worth all of the ramifications of filing to actually file a bankruptcy. You may be able to handle it through negotiating with that creditor on the debt specifically. But but it's an individual decision. Some people decide to move forward.
Well, thank you for answering those questions. And congratulations are in order for your recent judicial appointment.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Judicial Nominating Commission.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Andrew, for coming by and shedding light on bankruptcy issues and people's options. We really appreciate your time.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
If you are facing consumer bankruptcy, it's important to know what the law says about debt.